The text for today, we're starting a new sermon series, by the way. It's called Who Am I? And it's really about our identity in Christ. And so for today, kicking that off, our text is from Matthew chapter 16. When Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say the Son of Man is?" And they replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." "But what about you?" he asked. "Who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." Jesus replied, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by flesh and blood, but by my Father in heaven. And I tell you that you are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. And I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven." Then he ordered his disciples not to tell anyone that he was the Messiah. Dear sisters and brothers in Christ, grace to you and peace from God our Father and from our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Amen. I remember reading years ago a quote. It was actually by like 8 or 10-year-old girl from the famous Roosevelt clan. And they asked her the question, "Who are you?" And she said, "My great-grandfather was president of the United States. My grandfather was the U.S. Senator. My uncle was governor of New York. My grandmother was delegate to the United Nations. And I am a brownie." Wanted to make sure she got hers in. We all want to figure out who we are. We all want to figure out how we are connected, but also individually, who am I at my very core? Sometimes people respond with their family connection. I'm a Roosevelt, I'm a Kennedy, I'm a Bush. Sometimes it's a matter of relationships. I'm married to, I'm a child of, I'm the parent of. Sometimes it's all connected to a job. I'm a doctor, I'm a pastor, I'm a lawyer, or whatever. Or a nationality, or a sport. And that question, who am I, really is more poignant today for our graduates. So I want to speak to those 25 today. You can listen in, but I want to speak to the 25. Because as you leave the familiarity of home and go to college or work or trade school or even military, that question is going to be so significant. More than just an affiliation, more than just a connection to a sorority or a fraternity or a university or a job. At your very core, in your heart of hearts, in your soul, who are you? Do you know? So the text we're going to look at is from Matthew 16, which is all about identity. Jesus asks two important questions here to his disciples. The first one is this: who do people say that I am? That is, when you're out in the street, in the marketplace, when you hear the buzz, what are people saying about who I am? This is the easier question, right? What are they hearing? And it seems like they all chime in. Some say you're John the Baptist, maybe Elijah, Jeremiah, maybe you are Moses or the prophet that is to come. Interesting. There's a lot of buzz about Jesus. The second question is really important because you got to understand the physical setting. They're in Caesarea Philippi, which is in the far north. It is beyond the Sea of Galilee, on this major river. It's a port city. And so it's filled with everything and every kind of people and every religion and every pleasure you would ever want. It is in that setting, with a myriad of choices, Jesus asks a more difficult question, one that you and I and everyone who has ever lived must answer at some time, either on this side or that side of paradise. Everyone must answer this question. But you, who do you say that I am? Not your parents or your pastor, not your sorority or fraternity, not your school or your occupation, but you. Who do you say that I am? And I got to think all the disciples suddenly backed down a little bit. Maybe they chucked their sundial. Maybe they kicked the stones around, hoping that they wouldn't make eye contact with Jesus. Until, of course, it's Peter. It's always Peter. Impetuous Peter, who probably speaks before he even thinks about the answer. He says, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." Bravo. Bravo, Peter. Jesus says, good answer. You didn't come up with this on your own. You didn't hear about this at the street. Flesh and blood didn't reveal this to you, but God. My Father in heaven revealed it. Good answer, Peter. I got to think Peter's feeling pretty good about that, right? That God revealed this to him. And then Jesus changes his identity. You are Peter, which is a Greek name, a Greek word that means rock. You are Peter. You're rock. You're rocky. And upon this rock, that is, upon this confession, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. Upon that rock, I'm going to build my church. And not even the gates of hell will prevail against it. Now, I got to think Rocky's feeling pretty good as he's walking around, and you know who I am? They call me Rocky. I'm the guy with the answer. They're going to build his whole church around my answer. That's who I am. And then Jesus goes on to explain what it means to be the Christ, the Son of the living God. And he does so plainly. This is not a parable. It's not like a man went from Jerusalem down to Jericho, or a man went out and scattered the seed, or he found a pearl of great wealth. No, it's very clear. He says, now listen up. I'm going to be arrested. I'm going to have a mock trial. They're going to beat me, humiliate me, kill me. But on the third day, I'll rise again. Plainly. And if Rocky would have stopped talking at that point, life would have been good. Lesson learned, identity revealed, all is good. But of course he doesn't. He goes on and says, God forbid, Jesus. We're never going to let this happen to you. I'll do everything in my power to make sure this doesn't happen. Jesus gives him another name. This one not as complimentary as Rocky. In fact, Jesus does something a little uncharacteristic. He calls Peter a name. In fact, the worst name in the book. He says, Satan. Get behind me, Satan. You're not speaking, you're not thinking in terms of God. You're thinking in terms of man. Get behind me, Satan. It's pretty wicked. And why does Jesus respond so harshly to one he just called the rock? Because it must have been tempting. It must have been tempting. Nobody wants to be beaten. Nobody wants to be killed on a cross. Nobody wants to endure all that suffering. It must have been tempting. Satan tempted Jesus with the very same temptation in the wilderness, messianic of glory. Jesus prayed that it would go away from him there in the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus didn't want to go to a cross, so it must have been tempting. Get behind me, Satan. Now listen, Peter had the words right. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. He had the words right. He just didn't have the right meaning. Which is odd because he's been with Jesus now for a couple of years. If anybody should have known who Jesus is, it should have been Peter. But he doesn't. How does he miss it? How does he miss it? Well, you know it's not that hard. Most of our graduates here were baptized at Christ Lutheran. More of them had their first communion. Even more of them were confirmed here. They have heard the answers their whole lives. They know what the answer is. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. But do they know what it means on a deeper level? You see, as they go from high school beyond, you're going to have a lot of experiences. You're going to have a lot of new people, a lot more ideas. But here's the big thing. You're now adults. You actually got to start thinking. In high school, the teacher gives you the answer. You remember the answer. You give them back the answer. But now you got to think. What do these words actually mean? And so we come to a point now for the graduates as we send you off from the familiarity of your home. And we're going to send you off into your own Caesarea Philippi. That place of all ideas and people and all options. As you go out there, it's time to think and go deeply about what it means to say you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. It is not about glory. We find our strength in his weakness. We find our purpose in his suffering. We find our forgiveness in the cross. Because as you leave home, you're going to have a lot of people in your new Caesarea Philippi asking you all sorts of questions. Who are you? Who are you? And you're going to have all sorts of people laying claims on you. I'm in this fraternity or this sorority. I'm in the honors class. I'm a third-generation Buckeye. I'm a sports fan. I'm whatever. Before any of those groups and people lay claim on you, the most important one to start with here is going to be this answer to that all-important question. Who do you say that I am? You know the words. Peter knew the words. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. It's time now to figure out what those mean. Because in that, we find our identity. We're not only identifying who Jesus is, but we're identifying who we are. I'm a person in need, not in a superhero in Jesus, but in the Savior in Jesus. Because I'm going to mess up more times than I get it right. And it's this Jesus who will get me back on track, give me more of a purpose and a direction and identity as I move forward. So for the graduates, there's a great text from Isaiah 43 that I want to share with you, and I hope this is your memory verse as you leave home and go to wherever you're going after graduation. Okay? Isaiah 43 has this great line that says this: I have called you by name, you are mine. Let that be your memory verse. I have called you by name, you are mine. Before any sorority or fraternity, before any professor or classmate, before any sport or before any university, before any person lays claim on you, begin here. I have called you by name. You are mine. Another great thing about graduating for high school is you get a do-over. So many of us a little bit older would love a do-over. You get a do-over. Whatever kind of label, whatever kind of trouble, whatever kind of issues, whatever kind of name you had in high school, you can go away. You can leave it. You can turn the page, a new chapter. You get a do-over. You get to go to college or work or wherever. And there they're going to ask you, who are you? And you're no longer defined. You're no longer limited by all those things in the past. Not that it's going to be easy. Isaiah goes on to say, after he says, I have called you by name, you are mine, he says this, when you pass through the raging waters. Let me pause there. He doesn't say if you pass through, or perhaps you might one day, possibility. No, when you pass through the raging waters, and you will. And you will. He says you will not drown. Next line, and when you go through the fire, not if or perhaps, but it's when you go through the fire, you will not burn. Not because you're all that, not because you graduated so high in your high school class, not because you're going to this college or that college, but because of that promise, I have called you by name. You are mine. I have called you by name. You are mine. From the foundations of the earth, I knew your name. And when the time was right, I knit you together in your mother's womb. I numbered the hairs on your head. I knew the days of your life. Before the words passed through your lips, I knew them all together. Because I have called you by name, and you are mine. And now on this next exciting chapter in which you get a do-over. It's one that says, I will guide you along your paths. I will prepare you for the plans that I have for you. So I say to the graduates, be the rock. Be the rock. Be the one who stands on that confession that Peter got right. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And not just the words, but what it means. To have a Savior that comes to us, that claims us, who marks us, who seals us, who forgives us, who loves us. And this is a God who's going to give you that direction and purpose. So that when you do, at whatever age, 30, 50, 70, when they continue to ask, who are you? You will know that you're a child of God. You've been sealed and you have been marked by the cross and the sign of the cross forever. This is the time to figure out who you are before everybody else lays claim on you. But more importantly, whose you are. The one who says, I call you by name, and you are mine. Graduates, amen? I want to invite you up along with your parents up here on stage.